Hey, this is Brad Dyke saying hi, how you doing? Today is my first try at this, so please forgive me. Um, it's going to be talking about um, do it yourself. Now, I'm not afraid of taking something like an old remote, right? Or a piece of hardware or a broken fan. I'm not afraid to crack it open, fix it, try to fix it at least. Worst case scenario, I have to go out and buy a new one, right? You see, the key thing about today, and it's a very bad thing in my opinion, that's beginning to happen, and that is if you remember back in the day when your grandparents and your parents talked about the Great Depression and their parents, that was a very bad time. People were really, truly down to just what they could carry. Soup lines, bread lines, it was bad. So when we got past the Great Depression and we got to work, everyone was very frugal about paying for things. And people were very frugal about charging for the services they rendered. Well, you advance yourself 60 plus years, 80 years plus. That's not the case anymore. You see, the world industry has made a terrible mistake, at least in my opinion. And it's called a very simple term: planned obsolescence, based on what the customer will bear. Let me explain. Planned obsolescence, very simple. In the 50s and 60s and 70s, equipment lasted. I have a saw here, a radial saw, that was made in 1962 using acrylic compounds, and it works today. 1972 when I got it. No, I'm sorry, 1978 when I got it. And dudettes, that's a piece of hardware that was built to last. And for many decades, many things were built to last. So when you look at things, for instance, like a screwdriver, they looked at this and they said, well, we could sell one screwdriver for 50 cents in production, which ends up being like $1 or $2 on the store, the hardware store. They know they won't see that screwdriver replacement for that particular person probably for the indefinite period of time, because these things last. Then all of a sudden, the new screwdrivers that came out had fractionable plastic. What is this? Fractionable plastic opposed to an acrylic compound plastic. This doesn't really break. You really have to beat this up to break this. This is a piece of junk. You can snap this off just by applying 15 pounds of pressure. The strength of a hand. You torque too hard, you break it. Everything is kind of built that way. For instance, now I do like the Hercules brand. It's a great brand. But the way they designed it is they have a porosable plastic and they have a detachable battery. And these are probably the ultimate examples of planned obsolescence in the industry. Even if it's a great product like a DeWalt or a Milwaukee drill set or so on, or a cost-effective solution like a Hercules unit, they knew that not only did they have to make the device eventually expire, they had to design its expiration in two principal formats. One, by offering a proprietary connection point. There you go, right there, you see it? No one else has it. They patentize it, and then they build a battery for it. That's number two. Brilliant strategy, right? Design a tool that will last 15, maybe 15 years, more like 8. Design a production line for batteries to be produced for an X amount of period of time, and then you stop producing them, offer the next greatest, latest, baddest, coolest, neatest. Their goal is to get you to throw this in a trash can untouched, even though you might use it maybe in 8 years, 4 or 5 times. Truly. They want you to throw it away. Now, in comparison, you have a drill, which is an electrical drill, or a device that has an electrical outlet. For instance, as such, this drill, don't throw it away. Whatever you do, don't throw it away. Keep it. This is 35 years old. This is 2. Not even that. 1. So when you come across classical tools, for instance, like this beautiful soldering iron, which is about 58 years old, maybe 60, my father's tool from the late 60s, 60s and 50s. Those tools are valuable. Now, granted, they don't look brand new. Who cares? They work, and they're very efficient, and so on. So if you're able to get to such kind of tools in those time spans, I absolutely recommend it. But the key thing here is the other part of that statement I told you. Planned obsolescence that you are willing to bear. Okay, this is a big one because it goes a lot farther than tools or appliances. It goes to almost everything made today. They need the hardware to fail. That's the problem. They need it to eventually break down. They need you to come back and buy more. And this is how they do it. So look at a dishwasher, all right? And this happened to me. Now, when I got my dishwasher, one of like 4 or 5 of them, it broke. And they don't believe I have the guts to get underneath there and fix it. They want it to fail, and you can either charge a guy $3 or $5 dollar value of the washer. Let's say you get a $230 washer, right? So that means you're paying $150 to $250 to repair it when you could have bought a brand new unit. Get it? See how it works? They need you not to try to fix your stuff. Now, after the 1 or 2 or 3 year warranty you have, it's still your stuff. They need you to have it fail so that you're forced to come back to Lowe's or wherever and buy a new appliance. This is much worse for cars. I'll go into that later. So when you go in and you buy an object, let's say a clothes washer or a washer and dryer combination, and they will cover warranty coverages and all of that, and it's usually free. You usually have in the old days, you never had a break fix, and the warranty is just expired. Today, unfortunately, almost every washer and dryer out there breaks in warranty and continues to break outside of warranty. And it's because I think they've overplanned the obsolescence, and it's more of a trying to maintain the balance of here's what you're going to get paid for exactly versus what we want you to pay the price for exactly. And that's the give and take. They don't expect you to get on a website. Go to Parts Auto support website. Buy the parts. Take apart the dishwasher or the clothes washer or the dryer or the refrigerator. Replace the bad fan. Replace the regulator. Replace a circuit board. And so on and so on, because you don't have the guts to do it. And that is why I say here is planned obsolescence in effect for profitability based on what you're willing to bear. How do you fight this? Okay, here's how. Time. Go out, get your make and model and serial number of the appliance. It could be a simple tool that, breaks, or it could be something more significant like a door frame or a window, or a dishwasher, or a clothes washer, or a refrigerator, or a freezer. And you then research it. You research in detail to try to identify the issue at least twice. Try to fix it twice. First time is a lesson learned. Second time, you got it. You got it, and you can do it often. That was very common with clothes washers specifically because there's only so much you can do. because there's only a few manufacturers that truly make dishwashers and clothes washers and dryers out there, and they just rebrand them. But the bottom line is you're able to set yourself up in a way so that you can be willing to take a little time, dismantle the appliance, maybe a blender, maybe, and so on. Find the problem. It could be a simple short in a wire. Just replace the wire assembly. It's not hard. It's just a piece of wire. Just unclip it, put a new clip on, lock it down, put it all back together. I had to put it back together twice. That's okay. And it might not be a perfect assembly. That's okay, because it still works. It's still functional. It's doing what you need. You see, companies are making it as hard as possible to really try to fix things because they don't want you to do that. Now, here's the secret sauce about that. This has a bridging seal. Now, some of these tools require a Dremel tool to cut the seal. Now, it's already out of warranty, so don't worry about that. So you carefully cut the seal off, and here, I'll show you what I mean by that. You take a little tool like this. That's a carbide blade right there. It's a very thin little blade. And you can cut the seam of the glue off, and now you can begin to repair your device. Now, what is the one thing that is different between appliances and tools and household goods versus an automobile? Difficulty of access. That's right. So, I've worked on cars since the 70s. First, when I helped with my dad and my other family members, and basically, cars had accessibility, replaceability, supportability, and cars lasted. Because when an alternator went bad, you just needed like 3 tools, take them apart, replace the alternator, and so on and so on and so on. Starters weren't difficult to get to, and engines had some flexibility inside them. But in today's industry, the automotive industry is really doing everything in their power to stop you from working on your car. I know this because I do work on my car. Brand new cars, for the right off the lots. And I started looking at them and I said, well, I need the manual, please. They said, no, you can pay $400 a year to have access on a website to the manuals if you want to fix your car manually. I said, no, thank you. That's stupid. And they did that on purpose. Honda, all of them. So they did that because they would rather you ask them to fix your car at $5 to the dollar value of your vehicle. Let me clarify. I have a $45,000 Honda Pilot. When I went in to do lubricant, the oil in the differential, $500 up front. $800 if you properly sequence it at the dealership and or support OEM. To drain a fluid and put new fluid in it. Almost $1,000 for a very stupid process. Rinse and repeat. Look, I get it. If you don't want to change your tire, got it. If you don't want to change your oil, that is a tremendous expensive cost to you. But okay, you don't want to rotate your tires and so on, you're just forking out money like you wouldn't believe. 1/3 of the value of the car you bought if it was brand new. That is a great deal of money. Even though I'm frugal in regards to when I send my car for repairs, or when I know I just don't have the ability to do it because I don't possess the proper tools, that's a different discussion. Or I can't physically get in there and you have to drop the engine out to get to it. It's because the automotive industry did it on purpose. There is no other explanation for it in my book. They could have given you space. They did not have to put the extra plastic in the engine to literally keep you from putting your hands width of depth between the outer wall and the engine assembly. They do it on purpose. If you took all of that plastic out of your car, you would actually have some space in there and you could do stuff. And I know people who've done that. The industry, it says, don't do that. We did it for a reason. Yeah, you did it to make money. And I get it. But I don't pay it. Because I go in there and I take the skin off of my car and I replace headlight assemblies and I work on most of my car's needs. Only every once in a while I might have my specialist come over and do some work, but he knows the real value of doing that work opposed to what Honda would charge to have the car serviced. You have to understand, people, everyone, even HVAC companies and plumbers, they're all geared to take the dollar value of whatever you're putting in. Let's say, for instance, plumbing. You want to put a hot tub in your house, or an indoor, a bathroom hot tub, or a walk-in assist tub. That's a big trap right there. You basically have a $2,000 tub that you bought that you can walk into because you have a member in your family who cannot climb the walls of a bathtub anymore and has difficulty taking a shower, so they just need to go into somewhere, sit down, do their thing, get out carefully, and you're talking an hour and a half process just to take a 10-minute bath. But this is life. Guarantee you that if you have a $2,000 bathtub, it will cost you a minimum of $2,000 more to put it in. You think I'm joking? I'm not. That's how much we're talking about. And if you have plumbing supplies, like you have to replumb piping lines, it's going to be closer to a $2,000 tub with a $3,000 to $4,000 installation fee. That's what I'm talking about, being equal value of the object you're wanting to install. Let's say a $2,000 item, and the amount of labor is $1 to $1 in value. Roofs are another great example of that. If you're not, roofs are difficult. I mean, they really are hard to deal with. And that does take a lot of requirement. And if you're going to replace your roof, don't go cheap. Buy real quality shingles, dimensionals. You won't have to go back up there for 20 years if you do. The key thing is, when you go cheap, they get all the labor. And they just charge you. And they're giving you very subpar supplies. You don't know it because, you're not the professional. They are. But when you come to them and say, hey, I've got 45 packets of dimensionals, I need them on my roof, I just need a labor cost, then they're forced to give you a $1,500 charge or a $2,000 charge to put a $15,000 roof on your roof. This is how it works. So this is my very first video of doing this for do-it-yourself mindset, and I'll cover different topics and different things and help you try to get comfortable with doing this. Look, the real fact is, if you're not willing to try to fix something in your house that's broken, may it be made of wood, like a piece of furniture, most furniture can easily be salvageable. And it wouldn't take that much, maybe a couple of dollars worth of materials and an hour or 2 or 3 of your time. All the way over to computer systems. How the hype and hype of buying new really doesn't apply, because if you just use your computer system in a certain way, nothing they offer would make that computer any slower than it was when it was brand new in the first place. Yes, there are platforms out there, specifically Mac OS, are designed to make your hardware look slower than it really is because they want you to buy their stuff. Again, playing obsolescence in the game. But with that being said, this is Brad Dyke, and I try to keep these videos under 20 minutes. And I always cover the basic level above basic technical skills. For instance, you know how to turn a screwdriver, so I won't tell you how to turn a screwdriver. Lefty, righty, tighty, you know the rule, lefty, loosey, righty, tighty, that kind of stuff. I won't talk to that. I rely on you to be able to, get the real basic things. But I'm also going to cover some really classic books that I think are really super valuable, that you should consider doing it as you become more capable as do-it-yourselfer going forward. Hey, not everything you do will be successful, but at least you took the chance and the time to say, hey, maybe I can fix this truly myself, and be more of a fix-it person than that guy who falls off the ladder. We don't want to be that guy, right? Well, listen, God bless, have a good day, and take care. Bye-bye.